So, for weight loss part 3, let's discuss how to get it done. All right, here it is, the 6-step plan that works every single time for fat loss. It does require you to be committed and consistent and remember your why. We give you the tools and outline of what to do. Now you have to put in the work. You really have to be strict about what you are eating and track it. So, step 1, assess starting point. Step 2, set fat loss macros and calories. Step 3, set your goal and develop the plan. Step 4, track data. Step 5, assess data and tweak as needed. And step 6, reverse diet out back to your new maintenance. We include a weight loss worksheet in the resource section of this module to help guide your way through. It is available as an Excel document so that you can save it locally to your computer or phone and keep track of your data. We also include an example Excel sheet with data filled out so that you can see how to use it, and then a blank one for you to use for your own personal use. So we will discuss steps 1 through 5 in this module, and then weight loss part 4 will be all about reverse dieting to get out of the diet. Step 6, which we don't want to chronically live in a calorie deficit. So it's going to be important that you are strategically getting out of your diet once you get the fat loss phase done. So, as we've said countless times, determining your maintenance calorie range will help you achieve a healthy and successful fat loss phase. As Dr. Pete said, quote, "Without a realistic view of where you are, you can't expect to go anywhere." Maintenance means the amount of calories you can consume without gaining or losing weight. Remember, your maintenance calories are a range. So, for example, you may be able to consume 2,100 to 2,500 calories and maintain your weight. This will require some experimentation on your end. If your maintenance calories are less than, 19,000 or 2,000 calories, it may not be a good time to diet at this point in time. So you'll slowly increase your calories, 25 to 50 calories per week, and you can utilize the meal plans we created and start at the 1,800 calorie option and slowly move your way up to 2,000 calories, then 2,200 calories, maybe even 2,400 calories, as long as you're remaining active before planning to diet. But it is worth your time to do this experimentation and push maintenance calories up. The higher we can get our maintenance calories, the easier and healthier it will be for your fat loss phase. Also, it is beneficial for you to spend at least 1 month sitting in the mid to upper end of your maintenance calorie range. This will make your body a lot more responsive to a fat loss phase. Remember, play the long game. If you need a refresher, we covered determining maintenance calories in depth in week 2 nutrition modules, macros, and calorie needs, parts 1 and 2. Okay, so step 1 is to assess your starting point. This involves finding your maintenance calories and taking starting photos and starting measurements. You don't have to share these with anyone, but store them to look back on along your fat loss journey. This step is crucial for several reasons. First, it provides an objective baseline against which you can track progress. While the number on the scale can fluctuate due to various factors, visual changes and body measurements offer a more comprehensive view of your transformation. These initial records serve as powerful motivators when you hit your plateaus or feel discouraged, allowing you to see how far you've come. Additionally, having concrete evidence of your starting point can boost your sense of achievement and self-confidence as you progress, reinforcing your commitment to your health and fitness goals. So in the weight loss worksheet, again, in the resource section of this module, we help walk you through each of these steps. And again, there are 2 copies, one that's blank and the other that's filled out as an example. So you can download on your computer and fill it out along your fat loss journey. So we provide a tab to help you track initial data to gauge your baseline and maintenance calories. And then given your goal and your maintenance calories, we then have the calculations on there to help you determine your fat loss macros. And we'll provide a few different options given your preference for the amount of fat that you include in your diet. Now let's dive into step 2, choosing your fat loss macro targets and a calorie goal. Again, we do this in the weight loss guide Excel sheet, but we want to explain the why. So no, you don't have to technically track your macros to enter a calorie deficit, but it can be more efficient and is a very useful tool to help keep us accountable and get you to your goal quicker. So you'll be able to ensure you're in a calorie deficit rather than just guessing. It's also a very flexible approach and is not restrictive because you can really eat whatever you want in that macronutrient target. You can eat quality chocolate, ice cream, sourdough bread, as long as you fit it into your daily macro targets, which I believe improves diet adherence as you don't feel restricted or have binges. You can also lean into your cravings and make a ton of macro-friendly, fun recipes. This is also called flexible dieting because it's flexible of what you're fitting into your diet because you're tracking your macros. So why do we suggest tracking macros and not just tracking your calories during your fat loss phase? Well, you will lose weight with a calorie deficit regardless of how you fill those macros, but what macros you choose to fill that calorie deficit will definitely impact your calories out and will impact how you feel. For example, just tracking calories and say you're trying to hit 2,000 calories. Here are 3 different combinations that can lead to 2,000 calories. So 270 grams of carbs, 89 grams of fat, and 30 grams of protein. 25 grams of carbs, 190 grams of fat, and 48 grams of protein. 235 grams of carbs, 60 grams of fat, and 130 grams of protein. All of those equal about 2,000 calories, but they'll have different effects on your physiology and your metabolism. So really thinking about what macronutrients you're filling your calories with is important to just really make sure that you are feeling best during your fat loss phase, and we're making sure that we're supporting our physiology and our metabolism. Tracking your macros just really takes the guesswork out of fat loss. However, I completely understand that there are seasons in life where tracking may not be possible. And this is why I created the plate diet for fat loss. It's a PDF located in the resource section to help you build meals that can be filling but not super high calories. So it's a 2-page document, and the first page is a visual, and then the second page is a list of items to fill your plate with, organized by the different macronutrients. So starches, fruit, vegetables, lean protein, protein with fat, and dietary fats. So as you'll see on the first page, you will fill 1/4 of your plate with veggies that you do well with, 1/4 of your plate with fruit, 1/4 of your plate with starches, and 1/4 of your plate with protein. Whether or not you add an additional fat source like butter, coconut oil, chocolate, etc., depends on your protein source. So there are lean and fatty protein sources. If you use a lean protein source, you can add a little bit of fat to the meal. If you use a fatty protein source, there's no need to add additional fat to the meal. But feel free to use desired 0 or low calorie flavorings like salt, pepper, herbs, spices, vinegar, ketchup, salsa, and mustard. Be wary of store-bought dressings, however, since these can add up in calories very quickly. Okay, so let's get back to tracking macros and how to determine macros for your fat loss phase. Since we prefer shorter fat loss phases, I also prefer a little more aggressive with a 20 to 25% calorie reduction. This is also why I like for people to spend time finding the mid to upper end of their maintenance calorie range and be there for a period of at least 2 to 6 months. Because then when we drop down 20 or 25%, we are sure that the body is in a calorie deficit and we know the body will respond well with losing fat. The biggest con with a smaller deficit, say closer to 5 to 10% calorie drop, is that your rate of weight loss can be slow and it will require you being in a calorie deficit for a lot longer to reach your goal. This just may not be as motivating since you may not see the results as quickly. Remember how I said maintenance calories are a range? Well, this 20 to 25% deficit, it just makes sure that we get out of the low end of your maintenance calorie range so that we can enter that calorie deficit. However, choosing your calorie drop depends on understanding your tendencies and understanding yourself. Both of the options that I present here, option 1 and option 2, will work, but choosing the right one is important to set yourself up for success. So option 1 is more aggressive, and this would be a 25 to 28% calorie drop. So this is for someone that will be able to commit and stay focused. You already do all the right things like strength train, daily steps, cook your meals, track macros. You have a good relationship with food and you don't have binge tendencies. You can likely get your fat loss phase done in just 6 to 8 weeks and then slowly reverse out. You have really got to be focused and committed as hunger will be a little bit higher here. Now, on the flip side, option 2 is a little bit less aggressive. So this would be a 15 to 20% calorie drop. This is for someone that may not have the best relationship with food, has binging tendencies, and needs to improve healthy habits like sticking to macro targets, tracking macros, cooking your meals, strength training, daily steps, etc. With the slightly less aggressive approach here, your fat loss phase will be a little bit longer, 8 to 12 weeks in length. This will be a little less drastic in terms of dietary changes from what you're doing now, but you will still need to be consistent day to day with the food you're eating. But this may be the path to choose if you are in a really busy phase in life and you really don't have your day-to-day habits down pat. Both options will work, but understanding yourself and your tendencies will help you choose the better option that will work for you. You want to set yourself up for success. And now let's cover some example calculations for these two options. Again, these are done for you in the weight loss worksheet in the resource section. So to determine your fat loss calories, use the following equation. Option 1 would be fat loss calories equals your maintenance minus maintenance times 0.25 to 0.28. So that's the 25 to 28% calorie drop. So for example, with a 2,500 calorie maintenance, 2,500 minus 2,500 times 0.25 would be 1,875 calories. Option 2, fat loss calories equals maintenance minus maintenance times 0.15 to 0.2. So for another example of 2,500 maintenance calories, if we do 2,500 minus 2,500 times 0.2 equals 2,000 calories. However, I don't think anyone should eat under 1,500 calories. So if that 20 to 28% calculation below your maintenance drops you at 1,500 calories or lower, it may not be the best time to diet. You should spend some time working on your maintenance or sit at 1,550 calories for your fat loss phase and only spend 6 to 8 weeks there. Below 1,500 calories, you will start to become micronutrient deficient because it's just hard to hit your micronutrient targets when you're eating so little. And this is very low energy for the body. It will also be very hard to stick to. If your weight isn't budging at this low of calories, then it is not a time to diet. Now, given your calorie target, let's discuss how to fill these calories with macros. Again, all of these calculations are taken care of for you in the weight loss worksheet when you put your maintenance calories in. So let's start with protein, which is of course important to consume. And animal protein is going to be the best because it is rich in micronutrients, satiating, and it provides essential amino acids. However, unlike what some people will say, you don't have to go super high in protein. There's no benefit beyond a certain point in preserving more lean muscle mass, and this is shown in the literature. And for many, high protein can cause digestive problems and can have negative metabolic consequences. So here's two quotes from the literature. Quote, high protein intake may decrease insulin sensitivity, particularly during weight loss. And then another quote, high protein intake could have adverse effects on metabolic function because protein ingestion reduces postprandial insulin sensitivity, end quote. Some people will argue that protein is more satiating than other macronutrients. Well, a review study of 38 studies concluded that protein is more satiating than carbs and fats in the 10 to 20% of energy intake range, but not above that. So just meaning that like if your protein is more than 20% of your calories, there's no research supporting that it's more satiating than other macronutrients. So sweet spot of protein intake is somewhere around 20% of energy intake. And I really think the easiest way to calculate your protein is for satiety, and it's closely in line with the optimal protein intake that's reported in the literature for body recomposition is 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram body weight per day. So again, protein is of course important, but more isn't always merrier. So shoot for, 1.2 to 1.8 grams per kilogram per day, depending on your preference. This really is up to you in choosing what amount that you do. So for example, someone that weighs 157, if we convert that to kilograms, 157 divided by 2.2, that's 71.4 kilograms. So then a protein range would be 1.2 times 71.4, 85 grams of protein. And then the upper end would be I would say 1.8 times 71.4 would be 128 grams. So somewhere in that range. Next up, dietary fat. So targeting about 20% of calories from fat will allow us to keep our carbs higher, which we've discussed has some benefits. So let's say that your fat loss calories are 1,800, then 1,800 times 0.2 for 20% equals 360 calories divided by 9, and that's going to be 40 grams of fat. If this does not end up working for you and isn't sustainable, or it's hard for you to hit with food choices, you can increase this up to 30% of calories from fat, but I would not go any higher than that. So the 20 to 30% of calories works for your dietary fat. And then fill the remaining calories with carbs. So again, let's go back to a 157-pound individual that chooses 1.6 grams per kilogram body weight for protein and 22% calories from fat, with a fat loss calorie target of 1,800 calories. Again, this is just an example, and these calculations are taken care for you in that weight loss worksheet. So let's just say protein ends up being about 114 grams, given that 1.6 grams per kilogram per day target. Fat ends up being about 44 grams, and then carbohydrates, you'll take the 1,800, subtract protein calories, and subtract fat calories, and that leads about 237 grams of carbs. Again, choosing a slightly different protein and fat intake will still work. Just recalculate carbs, and just making sure that we're staying consistent with our calorie intake day to day is most important, and making sure we're in a deficit. And so there really is some wiggle room when it comes to macro percentages. So finding what you can stick to and what works for your life is important. Don't get too overwhelmed with trying to be perfect on macro targets. Set a macro target, just start with it and be consistent, gather data, assess, and you can always tweak. And then you can either track your food using, apps like MyFitnessPal or Chronometer using these macro targets, or you can use some of the meal plans we provided at your target fat loss or maintenance calorie range. So once we have our macros that fill our calories, let's now split these up into 3 meals. So I strongly advise avoiding snacks during your fat loss phase. 3 meals a day: breakfast, lunch, dinner. In a fat loss phase, we want to make sure that our meals are as big as we can and feel satiated and as full as we can. Trust me, this will make it easier for you to hit your daily calories to have 3 set meals, rather than being able to graze and snack all day long. It will help provide some structure to make it easier to stick to the plan. Now, you will not ruin your fat loss progress if you snack, as long as that snack is considered in your total calorie allotment for the day. But splitting those calories into 3 meals instead of 3 meals and snacks will help you stick to the diet better. There are multiple ways you can do this, but I would not recommend skipping breakfast. So you can split the macros into 3 even meals. So for example, take your macros for the day, divide by 3, and then each meal is about the same size. If you are dealing with hunger with this structure, you can instead try bookending your carbs to breakfast and dinner, and then having a slightly lower carb lunch to make sure that you feel satiated in the morning, and then feel more satiated before you go to bed, and avoid any late night urges to try to binge. So this would look like, example shown here. Again, this is just an example. So breakfast, you would have a little bit more higher carb. Lunch, you would have a little bit lower carb. And then dinner, you would have slightly higher carb. Again, you have to find what works. What matters during fat loss is that you find a routine that you can be consistent with. So now that we have a target calorie and macro target, next up is step 3, set a goal and write out a plan. So first, this involves choosing a start and an end date. The main thing to remember when we're in a fat loss phase is to get in, get it done, and get out. We don't want to be in a calorie deficit for a long time. We want to have a planned end date. Fat loss phases are not damaging to your metabolism when used correctly as a tool. And honestly, many people would benefit from having less fat mass on them. But chronic dieting will lead to negative metabolic effects that can cause a lot of damage. It's not good to put your body under prolonged chronic stress month after month after month after month. And some of our bodily functions can start to, tune down, since our body's not getting all the fuel it needs to run optimally. Long-term calorie restriction increases cortisol levels, downregulates or slows our metabolism, and can lead to nutritional deficiencies. Those things will not happen in a 6 to 12 week fat loss phase, so don't worry. But this is why we don't want to over diet and why I like periods of 6 to 12 week fat loss phases, depending on your context. This means that you're in a calorie deficit for 6 to 12 weeks, and then you start to slowly increase your calories to get out of a deficit and come back to maintenance calories. This also allows you to remain focused, committed, and motivated, because after 10 to 12 weeks, you may just start to feel super tired and may not be as motivated and excited as you were at the start. We want to be intentional, consistent, and effective with our fat loss phases. Plus, at some point, the body really is going to start to adapt metabolically and just may start to fight back. Now, it's important to point out that for someone with a lot of weight to lose, you may not lose all the weight you want to lose in a 6 to 12 week fat loss phase. So, accomplishing your goal may require 2 to 3 fat loss phases where you reverse back up to maintenance and sit at maintenance for a few months, focusing on strength training and body recomposition, and then entering another fat loss phase. This is a much more sustainable approach where the body will respond much better to and come with less metabolic costs instead of a full year or two of dieting. So it is best to divide your fat loss goals into a few phases if you have a lot of weight to use. I think it is a good goal to have a, body weight target in mind, but at the end of the day, body weight is meaningless. You want to look and feel good. So I think the first goal is to complete a 6 to 12 week cut and then really assess how you feel after the cut. Do you really need to lose more weight, or instead sit at maintenance and do some body recomp and increase muscle mass? So we'll start with establishing the goal and then creating a timeline to accomplish this goal. So if you chose option 1 with the more aggressive calorie drop, you'll have a 6 to 8 week fat loss phase. If you choose option 2 with a less aggressive calorie drop, yours will be more 8 to 12 weeks. Again, both will work, but you need to figure out what will work best for you. So here's the plan, how to get it done. Calorie deficit, 10 to 12,000 steps per day to start, 2 to 3 strength sessions per week, 2 zone 2 sessions, and good sleep hygiene or a wind down routine. So here's what this could look like when we look on a 7-day schedule week to week. Monday, you could have your strength session. Tuesday could be an off day. Wednesday could be a zone 2 session. Thursday, rest. Friday, strength. Saturday, zone 2. Sunday, rest. Now, your zone 2 sessions, they're not really super crazy, and you can do, 25 to 35 minutes. So each 7 of these days, however, you should hit your step goal, 10 to 12,000 steps per day, hit your calorie target, and try to prioritize getting to bed on time. Now, write out your 7-day schedule and what makes sense for you. If you are interested in a workout plan, you should check out our Train to Change app. As a Rooted in Resilience member, you can try the first month free using the link in the module description. You'll get strength workouts loaded up on your phone for you to follow. Now, returning back to the steps for fat loss, now we're on step 4 is to execute, plan, and track progress. So how do we track progress? 3 important variables. First, body weight. Yes, body weight can vary day to day, but it will show you trends over time, which is why we suggest weighing daily or at least 3 times a week and then comparing weekly averages. You'll want to take your body weight every morning completely naked after going to the bathroom, before drinking or eating anything. And then you can record this in the weight loss guide that we include in the resource section. And at the end of the week, the guide will average the weights so that you can have a better picture of how things are trending. So then the Excel document will allow you to easily compare your weekly weight averages so that you can assess your weight trends. Second way to track progress is to take pictures. So you can you can set your phone up on video, and then you can just stand in front of it and, stand to the front with your arms to the side, and then rotate to the side, rotate to the back, rotate to the other side, and then you can just take screenshots of those videos. That's honestly the easiest way to take progress photos. This can be a really shocking way to see progress, especially if you feel like your weight isn't budging. And we can really start to see body composition changes at that 4-week mark if we're really sticking to the plan. Now, you don't have to do progress photos every day or every week. I would say try to do these every 3 to 4 weeks to assess how your body is changing. And the third way to track progress is measurements. So this is ultimately optional, but it can be super helpful. So using a tape measurement or some way to measure, distance, take measurements on different parts of your body, such as your hips, your waist, your quads, your biceps, and your glutes. And this can also show progress when the scale doesn't, but at the same time, one must consider if they're weightlifting, that the muscles can still technically be growing, especially if you are a noob, a new strength trainer. But it can be really cool to see trends in your waist size going down. And ideally, we want to see certain muscle groups remain at a certain size, but it's worthwhile to take measurements once every 3 to 4 weeks as well. Other ways to track progress are simply how you're feeling, how your clothes fit, your confidence level. But without tracking anything, it's really impossible to gauge whether your plan is working. So if you just rely on feelings instead of data, that can be really subjective and really you could quit earlier. So consider at least doing one of the above. Ideally, weight would be the bare minimum so that you'll have a better time understanding what your next step should be and assessing whether or not your fat loss phase is working. So now let's set realistic expectations. Your weight will not drop every day, but you have to remain consistent and patient. We are human and progress is not linear. This is an important mindset to have during weight loss. There are going to be blimps in day-to-day weight measurements, and trends over time are more important. Water retention on a given day may cause you to have a small increase in weight one day. And that's why frequent weigh-ins, ideally daily, but at least 3 times a week, are important to more accurately gauge the trends. Weighing 1 time a week will not give an honest assessment. And sometimes you may see weird patterns. Some people may stay at a steady weight and then all of a sudden a whoosh where they see a drop in weight. If you are in a calorie deficit and are sticking to the plan, it will come. It's also important to realize that your health may not be perfect during this time. It's okay to have hard days, a few bad nights of sleep. Give your body grace. This is a conscious choice to lose some body functions in order to lose some fat. Don't expect this phase to be a breeze and have perfect energy levels day to day. It will require some motivation and dedication. Step 5 is to assess your data and tweak. So in the beginning of a fat loss phase, if we're consistent, you'll likely see some great progress, but you may have to make some tweaks to the plan as you get further into your fat loss journey. There may be a time where you reach a plateau. And so I would define a plateau as not seeing your average week-to-week weight drop after 2 weeks. The approach you use on day 1 may not work on day 60, for example. As our body changes, as we build muscle, as we lose fat, our energy expenditure can change too. Your body is smart and likes homeostasis. So over time, it can compensate for an energy deficit by reducing NEAT levels. So it can reduce involuntary movements like twitching, for example. You can start leaning more on cabinets instead of just standing up straight. But this is why tracking data is useful so that we can make adjustments and work through the plateaus. If you reach a plateau, so comparing not having a drop in week-to-week averages for 2 weeks in a row, the first question is to ask yourself and to be honest with yourself, are you really being consistent? This is the first question to ask before making any tweaks to the plan. If you're not being consistent, it's time to tighten it up and truly hit your macro targets, hit your daily steps, get your strength workouts in, and your zone 2 cardio sessions in. But if you really are doing everything right and have reached a plateau, you have 3 different levers you can tweak. First, daily steps, and that will increase your calories out. Second, number of zone 2 cardio sessions. And 3, calorie intake to reduce your calories in further. You don't want to do all these at the same time. We want to save tools in our toolbox and use them over time. The goal should be to do the least amount of things at first and still elicit weight loss. As you get deeper into your fat loss phase, you'll want more levers to pull. So the first lever to pull will be daily steps, as this is the lightest form of movement that won't require a ton of recovery resources. So if you're currently at 10,000 steps per day, increase to 12,000 steps per day and assess. If you're currently at 11 to 12,000 steps per day, then increase to 13,000 or 14,000 steps per day. Try this out for a week and see if your average weight for the next week drops. We really don't want to continue to increase steps beyond 16 to 17,000 steps per day, as this will really hinder our gym recovery and can be just too much for the body. It is important to be consistent with your target number for steps every day. Your body likes homeostasis and will try to lower your activity to adapt to the calorie deficit. So this will require intention and planned walks in order to fight the body's urge to adapt to the lower calories. Now, if you reach another plateau at your new step goal, again, 2 weeks of not seeing any changes in your average weekly weigh-in, then the second lever to pull would be zone 2 cardio sessions. So if you are at 2 per week, then increase this to 3 per week. Again, zone 2 is a light intensity cardio session, so it won't be super taxing on the body. The max total exercise and calories out combined movement I would want to see for you would be 2 strength workouts, 4 zone 2, and 15,000 steps per day. Or 3 strength workouts, 3 zone 2, and 15,000 steps per day. We don't really want to go much more over this total exercise volume. While exercise is good, more doesn't always mean better, and more activity doesn't always equate to more calories burned. We need to be smart about what type of exercise you do. The more weight loss we can get with less activity, the better. Remember, humans have limited capabilities. We can't just boost our metabolism so high that we can eat endless amount of calories without gaining weight. But on the flip side, calories out, we also don't have endless capabilities to make our calories out higher and higher. The more activity you have, the less energy expenditure you get out of it. So once you pass a certain threshold, the more energy you use for excessive exercise, the less energy you use to maintain organ systems, overall body repair, hair growth, etc. Our bodies have a limited capacity to how much energy it can expend, so it will downregulate other processes and you can see negative health effects. So this idea was tested by a research group with human subjects, which found that total energy expenditure increases with physical activity at lower activity levels, but then it plateaus at higher activity levels as the body adapts to maintain total energy expenditure within a narrow range. So essentially what this is saying is that there are exercise benefits up to a certain point. Past this point, it can be excess of stress and other bodily functions will have to give, and you will get less out of excessive exercise. So you'll get less calories out. So if you've reached your activity limit and you've reached a plateau, the final lever to pull would be calories consumed. So you would drop total calorie intake by about 150 calories per day in the form of fat and or some carbs. So 150 calories equals 5 grams of fat and 26 grams of carbs, for example, but you can choose whichever form of macros you would like. If this drop in calories puts you at 1,500 calories or below, it is time to reverse diet out of the calorie deficit and return back to a fat loss phase after several months of maintenance calories. It would be clear that your body is trying to fight you at this point, and in order to continue to lose weight, you'd have to drop below 1,500 calories, and I don't think that is in anyone's favor. A well-functioning metabolism should not have to eat lower than 1,500 calories to lose weight. This doesn't mean your metabolism is broken, as you can improve it, but the cost of losing more fat at this point in time can potentially cause some health problems. So just to recap of this, ideally, you won't have to utilize all these levers. Ideally, your fat loss phase will be successful in the time that we allotted, 6 to 8 weeks or 8 to 12 weeks. And maybe you have to use one of these levers. However, if you have to use all 3 levers and you've reached your total max combined activity, which I have written out here, and you are already at 1,500 calories for your calorie target for your deficit, then it's time to reverse diet out and find your new maintenance and push that maintenance calories as high as you can for several months. Okay, let's return and conclude this section with 10 tips to help you better stick to your fat loss plan and set yourself up for success. We'll go through each of these individually. So first, plan out your meals and stick with them for 5 to 7 days in a row. This will make your life so much simpler. You won't have to tinker with your macros day to day. Plus, you will avoid decision fatigue, and this will also help you stick to the plan. Now, I made 2 meal plan options at 1,750 calories for you to check out if you need some inspo. But if you track your macros on Chronometer, build your own meal plans. Fill them with foods that make you feel good, that you enjoy, and can help you stick to your goals. Changing these up every day will be draining and it can take up a lot of time. So in these meal plan inspos, I write out the macros, I write out the meals, I write out what you should meal prep and your grocery lists. Second fat loss tip is to prioritize sleep and rest. Yes, you need to hit your steps and get your workouts in. But when you're in a calorie deficit, you're putting stress on your body. So we need to prioritize rest too. Prioritizing rest and relaxation to keep your stress hormones as low as we can help you better support your metabolism during this time. So try to develop a wind down routine at night, a pre-bed routine. Getting rest and rejuvenation from sleep during this time is more important than when we are at maintenance, since your energy resources, calories, are limited. Of course, life events will pop up that will not make this possible all the time. And of course, you're going to have nights where you don't sleep well, but you do what you can. Third is to choose lower fat protein options during this time. This is not to say that higher fat protein options are bad, but prioritizing leaner cuts will make it easier for you to stay moderate fat and hit your calorie target. Plus, then you can fill your fat macros with eggs, cheese, butter, and chocolate, for example, things that are delicious and nutrient dense. So, some examples of leaner protein options include lean pork loin or pork chops with the fat removed, sirloin steak, chicken breast, codfish, mussels, shrimp, beef shanks, beef cheeks, lean ground beef, bone broth, collagen, and gelatin powder. For dairy, this would be, reduced fat cottage cheese, reduced fat or zero fat scurry yogurt or Greek yogurt. And then lower fat milk like skim milk if you can access it. Alternatively, use the do it yourself at home method where you let raw, non homogenized milk sit in the fridge in a drink dispenser, and then the cream will naturally move to the top. And then you'll be left with lower fat milk at the bottom to drink. So you can just let that sit in your fridge for 24 hours and then start to dispense the lower fat milk at the bottom. However, whole milk is also totally fine. You'll just end up using up more macros in the same volume of liquid. Next tip along the same lines, number 4, is include dietary calcium, like dairy, which we discussed will help you boost fat oxidation. Using both low fat and full fat dairy options to try to hit at least 1,000 milligrams of dietary calcium while also staying within your macro target. So this can be monitored on Chronometer, and the meal plans, the fat loss meal plans included here, hit just over 1,000 milligrams of dietary calcium if you need some inspo. Next tip, tip 5, is to be mindful of food density, also called food volume, during this time to help you mitigate hunger. This tip is major key. Eating in a calorie deficit can lend itself to you becoming hungry, and honestly, that really is a sign that you are in a deficit. Now, this isn't the worst thing in the world, but being hungry can be uncomfortable and triggering for some people. So we want to make sure that we're optimizing the foods that we eat to not only provide us with all the nutrients that we need and pleasure and satisfaction, but also to fill us up and keep us satiated until our next meal as well. For example, we'll want to prioritize whole fruits over fruit juices since this will be more filling. Juice is just really easy to quickly consume and doesn't always fill you up, but fruit has those extra fibers that are sometimes way more satisfying to eat and do keep you fuller longer. That means we want to choose foods that are a little bit more filling and prioritize nutrient density. So another example is going to be potatoes versus white rice, as potatoes are well documented to be a lot more satiating than white rice. And then considering more volume-friendly fruits, meaning lower amount of carbs per 100 grams. So then that way you can eat more of them and it will fill you up more. So some example of, volume-friendly fruits. Honestly, all fruit is volume-friendly, but there are some that you can eat a lot of and the carbs don't add up super high. So then you can have a bigger meal. Some examples would be strawberries, kiwis, melons, and honeydew. Squashes are another great food option at this time as they're a bit lower in carb, meaning you can have more food volume on your plate. And then add cooked veggies that you do well with and enjoy to each meal, as fiber is very beneficial to help with satiety and provide volume for lower calories. So being a little more strategic with our carb sources can allow us to feel a little bit more satiated and full while we're in a deficit. If you feel a very strong urge to snack, munch on a cucumber or carrot, as those are very low in calorie and just give your body the sensation of just chewing something. Next tip number 6, is to include caffeine, like coffee or tea, if you can tolerate it. Caffeine has been shown to improve energy expenditure and metabolism in the literature. Now, don't abuse it, but having coffee with a meal is great. Of course, time this appropriately so it doesn't interfere with your sleep. I also utilize this ProMix brand pre-workout. It contains some caffeine to help give me a little caffeine boost before my workouts to optimize my gym performance. Tip number 7, another major key tip is to include sparkling water or mineral water, as it is 0 calories and the bubbly fills you up and helps you fight hunger. Just make sure there isn't added calories or weird ingredients to these drinks. I really like to splurge on buying some mineral water like Gerolsteiner during this time because you get some beneficial minerals. Plus, the CO2 carbonation has a number of health benefits. Along the same lines, tip number 8 is chewing gum. Don't go crazy overboard here, as honestly, calories can creep up if you're like eating a pack of gum a day. So don't excessively chew gum. But I really like the Zellies chewing gum brand. It has xylitol. 1 to 4 pieces a day is totally fine and can help distract you from any hunger you may experience or just a general desire or urge to eat outside of your meals. Now, tip number 9, this tip sounds silly, but it really does make a difference. Play music, have fun, jam out, make yourself smile and happy. So I really like to jam to lots of music as often as I can. It just kind of helps you get through this fat loss phase time. And tip number 10 is to go on walks after meals. So this will not only help you get your daily steps in, but it can also help distract you from wanting to eat more at that meal. Also, a great way to spend time with your dog if you have one. All right, let's wrap up this module with a summary. So, tracking data is very important in your weight loss journey. There are countless research studies documenting that when we track and monitor data, we have a higher chance of accomplishing our goal and we reach that goal faster. We need to be mindful of the amount of food we're consuming to ensure that we are in a calorie deficit. By including quality carbohydrates in your diet, you can support your fat loss goals while maintaining muscle mass, metabolic health, and diet satisfaction. It's important to point out, however, that even if carbs are included, chronically eating low calorie will eventually lead to a low energy availability state, LEA state, which is why it's important to have a planned out fat loss phase and not chronically undereat calories. We also discussed that implementing smart and intentional exercise, not random and overly stressful exercise, is important. And a reminder to make use of the weight loss worksheet that we include to help support you through your fat loss journey. In the next module, Weight Loss Part 4, we'll discuss dieting. We'll discuss reverse dieting out of your fat loss phase. However, if you have any questions, need support and motivation, don't hesitate to reach out. Reach out in the community group or email us at support@Armstrong Sisters. This fat loss journey may challenge you in many ways, but you have got this. And we are here to help support you in any way that we can.